GamerNexus built one of the most trusted names in PC hardware by doing one thing really well: being straight with you. No fluff, no hype, just data. Steve Burke made his name reviewing graphics cards, catching companies lying about their specs, and holding the entire industry accountable, including companies that other channels were scared to touch. If GamerNexus said a product was garbage, it was garbage. That reputation took years to build, and for a long time, it was bulletproof. So when did this become a GamerNexus video? To understand what changed, you have to understand what GN was. Steve Burke started the channel doing hardware reviews out of Colorado, the kind of channel where they test 30 different thermal pastes just to tell you which one was actually worth your money. Obsessive, rigorous, and genuinely consumer first. Over time, they built a reputation for going after the companies. They took on Newegg when Newegg was ripping people off on returns. They publicly called out Linus Tech Tips when they felt the channel had plagiarized their work. They covered EVGA's exit from the GPU market when no one else was paying attention. This was a channel that built trust by picking fights with the right people and backing it up with evidence. So when I say something changed, I'm not just talking about the vibe shift. I'm saying the channel that trained me to demand evidence and receipts has over the last year and a half been providing something different, and I've got the receipts to prove it. Let's go through it. In December 2025, GamerNexus, or more specifically their new subchannel GNCA, which stands for GamerNexus Consumer Advocacy, published a 48-minute video called We're Also Effed. The subject was NVIDIA's partnership with Palantir, a defense and surveillance technology company. Now, NVIDIA's business decisions are legitimately in scope for a hardware channel. That's fair. But here's how this video opens.
It sells entertainment and video gaming to consumers, and they sell weapons and surveillance to governments. Just this year, NVIDIA vastly increased its lobbying efforts by over $3 million. It spent millions with the current U.S. administration, including a $10 million donation to the White House ballroom, $1 million to the inauguration, and more. NVIDIA also partnered with the U.S. government's favorite AI military.
NVIDIA equals weapons, surveillance, and Trump money. The video goes on for 48 minutes in this direction. Steve compares current law enforcement AI tools to George Orwell's 1984.
Utilizing surveillance data while using AI to focus on requested intel, like a laser beam. Taking a page out of the book 1984, Orwell would be so, well, I don't know if he would be proud or not. Let's go with terrified. The LAPD
covers immigration enforcement as a political horror story and closes with this.
Detainment and arrests of citizens. Law enforcement has used surveillance platforms like Palantir's to track, categorize, and target activists. Wired wrote, quote, surveillance of protesters has included the construction of dossiers known as baseball cards, with analysts using high-tech tools to compile subjects' social media posts, affiliations, personal networks, and public statements critical of government policy, end quote. As a specific example of the authorities squashing political dissent, in April, the U.S. government revoked the visas of 9 foreign students after they attended protests. It's an indiscriminate application of an inherently discriminatory technology. The only question is who's being targeted next time. Even if you agree with current government's ethos, this should still
and closes with this.
Have a great track record for responsibility or for being ethical companies, we think. If anything, they both seem hell-bent on what Karp calls domination. And Jensen's right there with him now. As a wise man once said,
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
Perhaps the worst part of all of this is that there doesn't seem to be a way to put a pause on this dystopian trajectory we're on, where there's no ballot measure to vote on right now that matters for any of this. They didn't ask if you cared. They don't ask what you think, what your opinion is, or what ours is. In their quest to build what they think is the future, NVIDIA and Palantir together may be creating the final boss, one where we're all helpless and...
He also sells AI dystopia merch off the back of it, in case you weren't sure how he feels. Around the same time, the GNCA channel published a video called AI Deregulation and Corruption. Companies now have too many GPUs. The opening line,
Our big tech overlords are getting exactly what they lobbied the federal government for, which is minimum AI regulation, maximum AI grift. And in fact, the tech executives now say that even though they won't stop vacuuming up all the hardware and sequestering it away so that consumers can't get it, they actually have too much of it. That's right. Here's Microsoft's CEO.
Biggest issue.
big tech overlords, maximum AI grift. That's not a hardware review. That's an op-ed. Later in the same video, Steve reads Trump's executive order on AI out loud, which is fair. That's the kind of thing his audience should know about. But here's what he adds when he's done reading.
National standard, not 50 discordant state ones. The resulting framework must forbid state laws that conflict with the policy set forth in this order, end quote. In other words, so much for states' rights.
5 words, but 5 very intentional words. That's not reporting. That's commentary. In April 2025, Steve produced his biggest project yet, a 3-hour documentary called The Death of Affordable Computing about the impact of Trump's tariffs on the PC hardware industry. Look, tariffs genuinely do affect PC prices. That's a real story worth covering, and the reporting in this documentary is thorough. He traveled the country, interviewed manufacturers, talked to small business owners. That part is legitimate journalism. But watch how he frames it. His own description of the tariff rollout.
Certainty of what's going to happen next week is what's causing all the markets to be very jittery. Yeah.
With things changing daily or weekly, I think this is more off-putting for any business than it helps. It just makes things a lot worse from my perspective.
And with this, if I see a tariff of 20 or 40% one week, 50 to 60 a day later, then I see it 120%. Then I see, well, electronics are maybe exempt and in Bloomberg. And then I see on Truth Social, no, that's not actually happening. I have no idea what that means. So I can't make decisions because it's not about it being a high tariff. It's about not having a clue what's going on.
We brought you this video with store.gamersnexus.
That Truth Social name drop isn't accidental. It's a tell. Then there's this, how the documentary ends. After 3 hours of coverage, Steve's closing thought is,
convince the people in power to make these exemptions. I'm sure it doesn't come easy for that type of influence. I think there was a giant dinner a couple days ago.
There was $1 million
$1 plate.
head,
Jensen Huang was at that dinner. I can't imagine that's a coincidence. But
no evidence, no source, just the implication that NVIDIA's tariff exemption was purchased at a dinner with Trump. That's the final word on a 3-hour film. Then there's the AMD video, Blacklisted by AMD. This one's interesting because it starts as a legitimate corporate accountability story about AMD's lobbying practices. But the way GN frames it, it tells you everything.
We're putting it into testing post-haste. We'll be a little late on the review, but we do have one. Our AMD What the Fuck coverage of what we think is AMD's corruption included what appears to be AMD violating its own corporate policies for how it handles political contributions, giving $1 million to the MAGA Inc. super PAC that has a direct link to Trump and his Save America PAC, which transacts tens of millions of dollars between MAGA Inc. and Save America. Lisa Su attending the Melania movie premiere, a movie which resulted in a reported tens of millions of dollars of profit going to the president's family. Lisa Su joining the Council of Corruption.
Epstein and a PC hardware video in the second minute and then later?
Companies with a reported $28 million in profit for the Trump family. Sue attended Melania's movie on the same day ICE killed Alex Preddy. As for that email, AMD did not answer.
He doesn't say AMD caused that. He doesn't make the explicit connection. He doesn't have to. The juxtaposition does the work. The router video. You'll subscribe to your router too. Follows the same playbook. Is framed as a consumer protection, but the target is clear.
This doesn't magically make these risks disappear. This is all happening after the Trump administration cut 1,000 jobs from federal cybersecurity work and while the Trump admin is trying to cut cybersecurity funding. weeks ago, pitching a $707 million cut to the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. This would reduce the agency's budget to just $2 billion annually, down from $2.5 billion last year. To put that into perspective, that's just 2.8 days of NVIDIA's revenue for a quarter spent on the entirety of the
And he features this quote approvingly.
spend for 2 gold cards. In a post titled, quote, Trump's cybersecurity policy is indistinguishable from a foreign attack, end quote, Bode asserted that the U.S. national security is being dismantled at the request of major telecom lobbyists, stating that the Salt Typhoon attack was, quote, caused in part by our mindless deregulation and lax oversight of telecom monopolies, end quote. He added that the Biden FCC...
Now, before we get to the pattern, I want to talk about the vehicle, because Steve doesn't frame any of this as political commentary. He frames it as concern about AI. And look, AI concerns are real. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Palantir is a great company or that mass surveillance isn't worth talking about. Those are legitimate issues that people across the political spectrum have raised for years. But here's the thing. If Steve's concern about AI is genuinely non-political, just a principled, tech-focused alarm about surveillance and corporate power, then why does the concern seem to spike specifically when the current administration is the one embracing AI? Think about the timeline. AI has been advancing and getting more invasive for years. The Biden administration signed executive orders expanding AI use in the government. The NSA, the CIA, law enforcement agencies, they were building out AI tools throughout the entire previous administration. None of that produced a "we're all so effed" video. None of that generated an AI dystopia merch line. But Trump gets into office, embraces the AI boom, and suddenly we're living in a dystopian surveillance nightmare, and Steve is selling t-shirts about it. The AI concern is the wrapper. It gives Steve a consumer advocacy sounding reason to cover surveillance, immigration enforcement, executive authority, corporate political donations, and tariff policy, all without it looking like a political channel. Think about how it works in practice. Palantir partners with NVIDIA, AI concern, cover it. Trump deregulates AI, AI concern, cover it. AMD donates to a Trump super PAC, AI concern, because AMD makes AI chips, cover it. Trump's tariffs affect GPU prices, AI concern, because GPUs power AI, cover it. TP-Link gets banned, AI concern, because routers connect to AI surveillance systems, cover it. Every single one of these topics connects back to AI, but every single one of them also connects back to the same political target. That's not a coincidence. That's a framework. And here's the tell. Steve's AI concerns aren't bipartisan in practice, even when they could be. The Biden administration's AI diffusion rule, which Steve himself called overly complex, overly bureaucratic, got one sentence of criticism. Trump's AI executive order got a full editorial comment. So much for states' rights. Same issue, completely different energy.
Our big tech overlords are getting exactly what they lobbied the federal government for, which is minimum AI regulation, maximum AI grift. And in fact, the tech executives now say that even though they won't stop vacuuming up all the hardware and sequestering it away so that consumers can't get it, they actually have too much of it. That's right. Here's Microsoft's CEO.
Biggest issue.
Big tech overlords? That framing only makes sense if you think the relationship between big tech and government is corrupt, which is a political position, not a hardware one. And it only becomes urgent content when the administration in power is the one you distrust. The AI alarm is real. I don't think Steve's faking it, but it's also doing a lot of political work that consumer advocacy can't fully explain. Now, here's what's interesting. Steve Burke is not oblivious to how this looks. Across every single one of these videos, he uses the same version of the same disclaimer. Watch.
That kind of sets the stage for where we're going instead. Where you thought that was bad. Just take the scenario where, let's say there's an upcoming politician. I don't care what party, I don't care what beliefs. Make it something you care about, someone you want to support. And they disrupt this, which websites and services you're using, when you're using them, and more, end quote. A government, any party, I don't care, having access to this type of information and the ability to oversee communications creates pathways to exercise authoritarian control and oppression of speech in particular.
Any party, any government, I don't care. Okay, let's test that. If he genuinely doesn't care what party, where's the Biden content? Where's the 3-hour documentary on Biden's AI surveillance executive orders, which he himself calls overly complex, overly bureaucratic? Where's the video calling Biden's GPU export controls a dystopian overreach? Those policies affected the same hardware consumers he claims to be advocating for. What you actually get is this. Trump's inauguration donations, bad. Trump's executive order on AI, so much for states' rights. Trump's aligned super PACs, corruption. ICE killed Alex. Same day Lisa Sue went to the Melania movie. Trump's tariff rollout, chaos. Truth Social and a pay-to-play dinner. Trump cutting cybersecurity, hypocrisy. Trump's cybersecurity policy is indistinguishable from a foreign attack. Featured approvingly. Then there's this clip in the router video. This is the one that really nails it.
Now, various types of bans and corporate collusion and collaboration with governments, it's been around for a long time. A lot of administrations. It's multi-administration, multi-party. It just so happens that right now, the set of people in charge in the government and the set of people in charge in the companies seem to get this shit done real fast. And it's not good for consumers or normal people. It's like a just fucking complete open corruption where even the bribes aren't disguised anymore. Like Tim Apple literally handing Donald Trump a piece of gold, and I think it was the Oval Office. So
multi-administration, multi-party. Then he names Trump in the same paragraph. The disclaimer and the targeting are inseparable every single time. None of this happens in a vacuum. Steve Burke came up through PC World, a publication that has historically leaned left and whose editorial culture shaped how he thinks about what neutral looks like. When you've spent years in an environment where a certain set of political assumptions are the default, you stop seeing them as assumptions. You just feel that they're facts. That's not a character attack. That's how media environments work. And it explains a lot about why Steve can say, I don't care what party, and genuinely believe it, while producing content that almost exclusively targets one. It also explains the AI dystopia framing. The surveillance concerns GN raises are real. Palantir is a real company with real government contracts and real civil liberties implications. Those concerns exist on both sides of the aisle. Libertarian conservatives have been raising them for years. But Steve frames them specifically through the lens of the current administration, specifically as a threat from the political right, and specifically as something consumers need to fear right now. That framing isn't neutral. It's a choice. Here's why this matters and why I made this video. GamerNexus has a massive audience of people who trust them on hardware, and that trust is earned. Steve's GPU reviews are still some of the best in the business. When he says a card runs hot or a motherboard has bad VRMs, I believe him. But that same credibility is now being used to deliver political commentary to an audience that came for benchmarks. And the commentary is one-sided, even when Steve tells you it isn't. That's not me saying he's not allowed to have political opinions. He's allowed to think whatever he wants. But when you position yourself as a consumer advocate, use the language of objectivity, and then deliver content that overwhelmingly targets one political party, you're doing something deceptive, even if you don't realize it. And honestly, the thing that bothers me the most isn't the politics, it's the pattern. Any government, any party disclaimer followed immediately by naming Trump. That move, repeated across 5 videos, tells me he knows exactly what he's doing. GamerNexus used to review hardware. Now it reviews the government. Maybe that's fine with you. Maybe you agree with the politics and you're glad someone with a big platform is covering it. It's a legitimate position. But if you came to GN for straight hardware coverage, and I think a lot of you did, you should at least know what you're getting now, so you can decide for yourself whether you're okay with it. That's all I've got. If that's hit different for you, drop it in the comments. I want to know if other people have been picking up on this, or am I just seeing things? If you want to dig into actual clips yourself, I'll link the specific videos in the description with timestamps. Later.